Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities, and we do this a number of different ways through this podcast. And I also have my first book out there, SOAR, SOAR, and it's an experiential journey through a transformative event in my life and shows how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. And I believe that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what you're struggling with, you too can get to a place of soaring. I am also an executive coach, so I help senior level executives reach sky high levels of success in all areas of their life. So we have an amazing show planned today. We're going to have a super intellectually stimulating conversation with Sharon Lebell. Hey, Sharon.
Hello there.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure and privilege.
Thank you. So Sharon is going to tell us a little bit about her internationally best-selling book, The Art of Living, and a few other things too. We've got a super deep convo around that's going to resonate with philosophy lovers, and we're going to talk about Stoicism and also how to live your best possible life. Lots of intriguing topics. But before we launch into all of those, I'd like to start off the show with my question that I ask all of my guests. And that is, how do you live authentically every day?
I seek to live authentically every day by asking myself one question. And it's simply this: what can you do with a moment? What can I do with this moment? Because when you think about it, well, first of all, it's all we have. This moment, oops, there it went. Oops, there it went.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we live. And the thing is, in this moment, I could pull a gun.
Mm-hmm.
I could kiss someone.
Mm-hmm.
I could put down that drink for the last time. Enough is enough. This is wrecking my life. I can write the letter. I can go for a run. So often we give up or we postpone our agency, our ability to do something that matters. When in the given moment, if we stop, we realize the possibilities are infinite and it's on us to choose. And so it's a valuable question, for me anyways, to recurrently ask, because everything in this modern world conspires to make us, not like in some conspiracy, they're all trying to get us sort of way, but it's the nature of modern life to give us so many sensory inputs that it's the easiest thing in the world to let our lives and the value we could give and the value we could experience slip away drip by drip, moment by moment, every time we forget everything can be changed right now, because the decision we make right now, it can radiate into the future. Its consequences, rather, radiate into the future in ways that, of course, we'll never know in the fullness of time.
Mm-hmm.
But we have so much more control over what's going on than we often think we do.
Yeah, well said. And I know that one of the barriers to that, to making those conscious decisions in the moment, like stopping and pausing and asking yourself, how can I make this moment in front of me the very best that it can be? And how can I optimize that? One of the barriers, I believe, is those unconscious modes of operation, right? That mode of autopilot, just doing things, going through the sake of, going through the motions and doing for the sake of doing. It's a really powerful force. And that those, the habits and the behaviors that we're just accustomed to doing really without even thinking about it. So how does one stop the momentum of unconscious behaviors and start to shift and pivot toward more conscious ways of living?
It's a really important question, and one to which I don't have a, a monolithic, conclusive answer. But what I do believe we can do is set deliberate reminders to, like, well, as you call it, taking a pause to draw yourself back into yourself again, or to remember to remember. So I'll give a very personal example, because there are no one size fits all answers, I believe, to your question. I play an instrument a musical instrument that I treasure. It's a big, it's kind of a hybrid of a santur and a hammered dulcimer, big stringed instrument. And what I do is I put a little Post-it note on it, because I pass it all the time. And the Post-it note says, pay the toll. And all that means is, like, to pass by my instrument, to cross the bridge, as it were, I have to stop and I have to play one tune. One tune. It takes 45 seconds, takes a minute at the most. But by that stopping, by remembering to stop, the aggregation of all those times that I just play the tune, just one little crummy tune, suddenly I can play a whole bunch of tunes, and I can play them beautifully, and I can share them with other people who then cry or are happy or whatever, not because I'm so powerful, but that just happens to be what I do. And so I would urge other people to just find ways of reminding themselves, for lack of a better way of saying it, remind yourself to be who you decided you were going to be. I mean, one of those aspects of that question for me is I'm a
Mm-hmm.
musician. Well, if you're a musician, pay the toll.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that real life example, and because I think that this journey, journey to authenticity and to remind ourselves to live authentically, et cetera, is it has many dimensions to it, right? It's like mindset, making sure that our mind is in the right place, but also taking a more tactical approach and bringing that into our physical reality and really designing our lifestyle with intentionality around that, so that it's easy to choose authenticity, or so that at least we're making the decisions. It's easy to make the decisions to choose authenticity in the moment. So that makes me curious about what other ways in which you've designed your life and your lifestyle to support your authenticity.
Very simple things. Walking in the woods. I know it's a classic, but that'll bring us home to ourselves anytime. Just we take a walk. It doesn't have to be in the woods. It can be in the bright lights, big city. Uh, Stopping and reading a book. I guess I would say, doing anything where all you're doing is that thing. I'm a big fan of monotasking, not multitasking. I don't, other people feel differently, or maybe have bigger brains than me. But to me, every time we stop and we focus and we first ask ourselves, am I even doing something worthwhile here? Worthy?
Mm-hmm.
Not that we have to always be doing, grand headliner type things, but just to make sure that we're not, kind of like you said at the beginning of our conversation, just sort of checking out and going on autopilot, uh, because we're so besieged by information and people who have claims, or want to assert claims on our attention. Um, yeah, just do one thing.
I think that's excellent advice. And that's something that I've really strived to do more and more over the years, is just focusing on one task and being fully present. We really do subscribe to the belief that everything is energy and there's a momentum associated with that. Every time we switch gears, there's energy lost there, right? And there's a cumulative benefit to focusing on one particular task over a prolonged period of time. And the brain, neuroscience shows us and tells us that, the brain really isn't designed to be able to focus on more than one task at the same time. So there are tremendous benefits. And yeah, I love that you do that. So
I
yeah.
like that you said, just because it seems so right, that if you keep pivoting to different things, you do lose energy. I never thought of it that way, but I think you're right about that.
Yeah, and I actually feel it too. I know when I was starting my business, I had a lot of different irons in the fire, and I was just learning how to, do discovery calls with people. So I was shifting around so much during the day. I was doing a discovery call, and then I would do a coaching session, and then I would record a podcast. I'd have to go, like, in the middle of all that, go run upstairs and get like camera ready and come down. And so now, like, playing like makeup artist in between all of that. And I literally wore like 80 different hats over the course of the day. And I was exhausted by the end of the day. I'm like, this is entrepreneurship. This is this is not exactly what I envisioned, but I had to completely overhaul the way I did things. And so now, I batch a lot of things, and I really minimize the number of core tasks that I do throughout the days. And it has made such a huge difference.
Beautiful.
Thank you. So, all right, spotlight back on you. Enough about me and my whole entrepreneurial journey. Let's talk about your book. I'm really intrigued to hear about your book.
Sure. Well, ta-da! It's called The Art of Living, the Classical Manual on Virtue, Happiness, and Effectiveness. And what it is it's a modern interpretation of the teachings of the ancient Stoic Epictetus, who lived about 2,000 years ago. And
Okay.
he was the teacher of Marcus Aurelius, whom people are a little bit more familiar with. And it's become, it's funny, I wrote this several decades ago, though it's been revised and material has been added to it. And it's become a lot of people's kind of their day book or their guidebook to life. They keep it on their nightstand and just even dip into it at random. Because, well, who the heck was Epictetus? Well, like I said, he was a Stoic, and some people are familiar with Stoic philosophy and some people aren't. Uh, Being a Stoic, capital S, is very different from being a Stoic, lowercase s. Lowercase s, we all have a kind of picture in our mind of, like the guys at Mount Rushmore. But Stoic, capital S, is a kind of timeless philosophy of, well, one way to put it is adversity management. Not that it focuses on all the hard things and the obstructions in our lives, but it's adversity that we need help with, right? When we're just skiing along, everything's fine. So this book, it's a manual for living. It's a way of, it describes a way of thinking that helps us to see our emotions clearly for what they are. It's not emotional suppression, but it's emotional clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a good companion, I think, for the fraught times that we are living in. It's a way to just make those, it helps you make those micro adjustments to your character and to your choices and to your commitment that help you kind of remember your inbuilt sense of destiny. What I mean by that is, we often hear, hey, you only live once. And I believe that, but I actually think we live two simultaneous lives. I think we live our outward, our presentational self, along with our inner life, which is always tugging at us to remember that better part of our nature that we want to amplify or grow into. And so, circling back to this book, it's The Art of Living, I like to think, helps us do that, helps us create more of a congruence between that outward presentational, managed for public consumption self with the yearnings of our hearts.
Beautiful. I love that. I'd love to hear you talk about a philosophy that you discuss in the book and its associated practical application. Can you give us an example of how we bring together these two worlds?
Sure. Well, classic Stoicism and classic Epictetus, a la The Art of Living, contains the exhortation to identify what you can control and what you can't. And we've all heard this. People hear it in 12-step programs. They hear it all over the place.
Mhm.
But it grew thousands of years ago out of Stoic philosophy. Perhaps not exclusively, but it's one of the main pillars of Stoic thought. And when you really, again, stop and pause to come back to what we keep talking about, and when you're facing some kind of challenge, some kind of difficulty, or just trying to figure out how to get from A to B,
Mhm.
it's so valuable to stop and to quite literally, even take a piece of paper and draw a line down of it. You know, I can control this, I can't control that. And
Mhm.
then once you've eliminated that which you can't control, then you can get to work focusing on what you can. And while that may sound simple or simplistic, in practice, it's extremely powerful. It really makes a big difference because so we spend, if kind of left to our own devices, so much time head banging over what we can't control.
Right.
Yeah, we just do that.
For sure. Yeah. So, what advice do you have for people? Like one of the questions that I get a lot through my coaching is, how do I deal with family who's that's challenging, or how do I deal with challenging coworkers who either fly off the handle or whatever. So what advice do you have for someone in those situations where, because the easy thing would be like, remove yourself from the situation and go, seek your answers in the woods, right? Like I love to do that, but like the reality is like, we can't escape certain situations, right? There are certain people that we have to, be around regularly, and we find it very challenging. So what advice do you have for people to navigate situations like that?
Well, I'll use a little Stoic language. A kind of subsidiary idea to this notion of knowing what you can control and knowing what you can't. In other words, say you're having to deal with Robert, and he's just insufferable, and he's obstructive, and fill in the blank. We all
Yeah.
have, my apologies to people named Robert. But once you figure out, you know, Robert's just Robert, Robert's gonna,
Yeah.
that's his game, that's his MO, then one thing that you can remember, and this is something that the Stoics teach over and over again, that these kinds of things, like these vexing things, like, Robert, or just the train's not coming on time, or whatever it happens to be, these, once you realize that these are what Stoicism calls externals, or sometimes they call them indifference, you can habituate your mind to just simply withdraw allocating so much significance to those things. It's not that you don't deal with them, but so much of our frustration and our suffering and our sadness is, well, I could have said to Robert, or if,
Mhm.
there he goes again. But, if Robert is just if you regard him as just like, it's raining out today, get your
Yeah.
umbrella and get on with it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't mean to
Yeah.
be overly glib, but I mean, to be sure, dealing with people, it's hard. People are hard, and that's where we live, in relationship with others, right?
Mhm. Yep. Yep. And if we can view even the challenging interactions as opportunities, right? It's all about like reframing it and viewing it as a learning opportunity, because any time that we experience an emotional, anytime something in our environment elicits an emotional charge in us, that really gives rise to and brings awareness to a part of us that's unhealed, and that gives us an opportunity to ask yourself the questions like, why am I being triggered, and what can I learn from this, and how can I reframe this, and how can I make this so not about me, and not take it so personally, and understand that it's about what's going on with that other person. And how can I, again, it goes back to agency, right? It goes back to choice. Like I have a choice. I can either stay stuck in this, and I can continue to choose suffering, right, and hold myself in that lower vibrational energy. Or I could take the unconditional approach and say, you know what, Robert's angry, but I don't want to feel like that. I don't like how I feel when I'm feeling angry. I like to feel peaceful. So I'm going to focus on my side of the street and choose peace and choose joy and choose happiness, and let Robert fly off the handle if he wants to. And then I can articulate my boundaries and what I'm willing to and not willing to tolerate, and give Robert the opportunity to rise up and meet me in those higher vibrational energies.
Amen. I'll have what she's having.
That's after a year. I wasn't born this way, just so everyone knows. This is after a long, long, long stretch of spiritual work.
Yeah. Well,
And I
good
just
on
live
you.
in peace and bliss, and I never experience anger or stress or anxiety or any of those other human emotions. Just kidding. Just ask my kids. So, anyways, moving on to our next topic, I'd love to explore. I know there's a question that you've been pondering for a great deal of your life, and that is, how do we each live the best possible life, and what does that mean? So I'd love to hear you, love to hear your contemplations around that question and how that's evolved over time.
I'm still living those questions. Those questions animate all my days. What I have is are half-baked answers. What I have are themes. For example, the theme of when in doubt, just be generous, or just just love anyway, or just every day try to somehow make something beautiful. And that can be the smallest thing. But I think I'm a big fan of beauty, of recognizing it, not not being blind to it as we go about our workaday lives, and making things, whether it's a beautiful cake or just doing the supposedly small things in our life with a little bit of extra finesse. I'll give an example. And again, everybody needs to personalize uh, how they live their lives, what their values are. But one thing I do every single day, which I believe keeps me on track going in the direction of living my best possible life. So it's a very ordinary thing. What I do is I always hand write with a pen, a letter to the first person I think of every day. It might be someone I know. It might be, an author I've admired. It could be anyone, a casual acquaintance. And I get out. Uh, I have this. I'm kind of a nut. I make this handmade paper because I like
Oh,
to do that out of onions and things.
oh wow, that's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like to slow down to the speed of life and do non-digital things. But going back to beauty, I just write a letter to the person. Sometimes it's just a kind of letter of well-wishing, or perhaps someone's sick and uh, needs some hope and some strength, or
Mhm.
telling an author, on page 238, that was such a sentence you wrote, whatever it is. And then I, bim, bam, boom, I just, put the letter in an envelope, slap a stamp on it, and put it in my outbox, which happens to be the passenger seat of my car. And it gets mailed. And what happens is, I mean, I think of this as just this very humble way to make a little beauty out of, what could otherwise have been done as, as an email or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, with all respect to email has its place, but it creates these 365 fortified relationships of all kinds. Not that that's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is to get butt in chair, to slow down to the speed of life, and to really think about the other person, what they mean to me, and so on. And it takes 7 minutes
Mhm.
max, but it just kind of upgrades things. It makes things good.
I love that. That is such a beautiful practice. I may have to take a page from your playbook and put
Yeah,
it into place in
give
my life. I
give it a
love
whirl.
that. I really
It's
love that. I was just
wonderful.
thinking, as you were telling me about it, I was thinking, like, imagine if everyone in the world did that. Like, what do you think the world would be like if everyone just took 7 minutes and did that? Shifting them into their
Yes.
mode of appreciation and relationship building and, like you said, fortifying connections. What type of like what type of widespread effect do you think that would have?
I I can only imagine that it would be lovely. Um, you think how much time people, it's a cliche to say it, but it's true, just how much time people spend, scrolling on their phone or what have you. And instead, to essentially, in this kind of action, I mean, what it's saying to other people is you matter.
Mhm.
And I think, I think we all, that's what we want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that. So I just glanced at the time. Our conversation is going by so fast.
Yeah.
It's just so
Oh
beautiful.
gosh.
But I'd like to give you a few minutes before we wrap up I'll give you the floor and you can talk about whatever you'd like to, in terms of if you'd like to talk about one of your upcoming projects or something you've got here in the near future, or any words of wisdom for people, that they can incorporate into their journey.
Well, in terms of what I'm up to, one thing I'm very excited about is I'm working with two other gentlemen, and we have started an online philosophical society called the Walled Garden. And its purpose is to allow people from all over the world to meet up together and to talk about how philosophy can be applied in real life to uh, to help us live with dignity, grace, and style.
Ooh, I
So
love how that
yes,
sounds.
yes. So the Walled Garden, and you can find us on thewalledgarden.com. I think that's how it. You know, you just Google Walled Garden. And
Okay.
as far as parting wisdom goes, hmm, I, there's there's nothing particularly new or pyrotechnic about this, but I think it's so important, especially for women, but for everyone, to trust our instincts,
Hmm.
to listen to. I know people call it this, what the still. I mess everything up, but you know what I'm talking. The still voice within, but
Yep.
there are, life gives us messages. If we listen to life, life will tell us things. And I don't want to sound like a total space cadet, but I urge people to listen, not only listen to those messages, but to heed them. Um, only good stuff comes from that.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Such powerful wisdom, that intuition, just allowing
Yes,
you
yeah, intuition, right?
guide you, and it's okay. I've found on my journey, it's okay to not be able to put words around it to explain something, or not, you don't always have to have physical real world evidence. I think that some people, sometimes, I know I used to be like afraid to trust that. Like, I can't see it, feel it, touch it. Like, what, I'm making this decision based on a feeling. But yeah, like, it's what it's there for. Like, invite it in, allow it to guide you, and your life will be taken in amazing directions. So thank you for sharing that, and for ending on those really powerful words of wisdom, and for being here. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to tell us about your mission and your purpose and all the amazing work you're doing in the world. So thank you again for being here.
Pam, thank you. It was fun.
It really was. It was a blast. It just flew by. It really just flew by. I was just so dialed in and in the moment. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. I so appreciate you and believe that time is a choice. And I'm grateful that you've carved time out of your day to be here to listen to everything that Sharon has had to share with us. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.